So we have today the great honor of receiving Anand Menon, who is the director of the UK in a Changing Europe project, a project which you should take a look at the website of it because it's a very interesting one. So Mr. Menon, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We've been talking about Britain, Brexit, and its impact on British politics. What would you say, first of all, would have been the cleavages behind the vote in the referendum of last year?
Well, thanks for inviting me. Brexit is all I talk about these days, but anyway. There were lots of cleavages. The main one, I mean, what the polling shows is if you want a simple explanation for Brexit, you look at education. Levels of education were the key guide to how people voted. People with a university degree or equivalent tended to vote to remain. People without tended to vote to leave. Obviously, there were other factors as well. Age was important. Geography was important. So it all came out slightly differently in Scotland and Northern Ireland than it did in Wales and in England. Wales and England voted to leave. Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to remain. But the two crucial drivers were age and education.
And then, well, what's interesting now is that we are only a few days before Theresa May launching this Article 50. What lies behind, and what's beyond? What's ahead for the negotiations between the UK and the European Union? What are the challenges?
Well, what lies behind essentially is politics. We have this deadline of the end of March, which is a deadline that Theresa May set herself, which is a bit unusual. But the reason she felt the need to set a deadline was because she was worried that the Tory Eurosceptics in her own party were starting to get anxious around autumn of last year that nothing was happening yet. So the deadline was a way of reassuring them, don't worry, we're going to do this. So she's going to meet her deadline, she's going to trigger Article 50, and then we have 2 years of negotiations, which I think will quite possibly end up being quite bad-tempered and quite fraught, because we have to negotiate not just the future, our relationship with the European Union and how we trade with them, but very difficult decisions about how we deal with the loose ends of our membership, and particularly money. And money, as you know, when it comes to the European Union, can poison discussions very, very quickly indeed.
Could you please elaborate a little bit, on these difficulties that we are going to witness in the negotiations in the next few years?
Well, two different sorts of difficulty. It'll be very difficult to negotiate a trade agreement, but even before we get to that, we have to negotiate the so-called Article 50 deal. And that's the deal about tying up the loose ends of membership. And here, the European Commission is talking in terms of a Brexit bill in the region of 60 billion euros. Now, Britain, as you'll know, has never been particularly comfortable about paying its bill, even when it was a member. We used to fight against the EU budget rising all the time. What is going to be very difficult is finding a figure for that bill that is acceptable to the remaining member states. They feel they're getting a good deal, and politically acceptable to Theresa May. I think that the area of overlap between those two is very, very small, if it exists at all.
Well, I think that's enough. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Menon. It's been a pleasure to receive you here at Elcano.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.